One more. We're waiting for Marcia.
It's a season of hat hair.
Hat hair, exactly.
Yep.
I also had a child and lost hair, so there's that. Like literally.
Yeah, been there, done that. Yep.
Okay, here's Marcia. Okay, I'm going to press record and we'll start our meeting.
Recording in progress.
Okay, welcome everyone. It is Monday, November 29th. It's 5:31. This is a special select board meeting. I'm here in the small conference room at Tracy Hall. Rod Francis is in the town manager's office. There's a public access terminal downstairs in the large conference room, and I'm joined by Mary Layton, Rob Gear, Marcia Calloway, and Claudette Birchdew remotely. Okay, so the first item on the agenda is the approval of the agenda. We have one item to actually add. It is an AP warrant. It is a citizen assistance fund request. So I'm going to add that. I'm going to request that we add that or amend the agenda to have that come after public comment.
Okay.
Okay.
I move to approve the agenda with the addition of AP warrant.
Okay. Is there a second? Okay. I saw Marcia's hand. So made by Mary, seconded by Marcia. Thank you. Any discussion?
Any vote or discussion?
Okay. Okay. So all in favor of approving the agenda as amended, please raise your hand. Okay. Thank you. Unanimous. Okay. The next item on the agenda is public comment and select board comment. Do we have members of the public who would wish to make a comment? I don't believe there's anyone on the public access terminal downstairs. Okay. Any select board comment? Okay. Oh, go ahead, Claudette.
Yeah, I'm hoping you discuss this public access terminal. Is that going to be included in the next agenda item?
Totally.
Okay.
Yes, absolutely. Yes. Any other comments? Okay. So move on. In our amended agenda, I think the next is the AP warrant. And so this was to provide assistance to a citizen. So this is a warrant. So this warrant will authorize me to sign it, and it'll be using, I believe, designated funds, the designated fund for this purpose. We usually don't have substantial discussion for this because of the nature of the fund around confidentiality. But if anyone have any questions, they should reach out. They should feel free to reach out to Rod, who handles it in dialogue with the citizen assistance, the town services officer. So why don't we begin with a motion and then we'll speak further in the discussion. How's that?
Okay. I move to authorize Roger Arnold to sign AP warrant number 22-12 in the amount of $1,200.
Okay. Is there a second? Okay. Seconded by Rob. Made by Mary, seconded by Rob. Any discussion? Marcia, I saw your hand.
Yeah, just a quick question. Is there some place where there's an itemization or description of the kinds of assistance that's available? Is that published somewhere?
So I believe our fund is established in the spirit of the state statute around town services officers. So the guidance for what their role is informs the use of the fund. Does that help?
Yeah, I'm just wondering, does the town service officer monitor that?
I believe in dialogue with the town manager has been the practice.
Okay.
Anyone else have any background to provide for Marcia in the spirit of her question? Go ahead, Mary, and then Claudette.
Sometimes in the past, I know the funds have been used for heating assistance or perhaps even updating of a furnace. So I think it's, it's needed, this assistance. And I take your point about somebody should know what it is, or in general know what it is, but yeah.
Yes, it's to be clear, it's food, housing, and heat typically.
Mhm.
Sorry, go ahead, Claudette.
No, it's been said.
Okay, thank you.
But I will point out that typically, or in the past, the requests have been made by the citizens to the town service officer,
Yes,
who then brings it to the town manager.
that's right. Thank you for that clarity. Rod, do you have some context about this request?
Hi, just to confirm for Claudette and everybody else that that's exactly what happened. So it was the town service officer that had been contacted by the citizen, and then the town service officer contacted me. We gathered enough background information and proceeded with the process that you laid out earlier.
And we appointed Kate Barlow in March to that position.
Correct.
Okay, well,
Thank you.
yes, so I appreciate that discussion. It's out for public record. Let's vote. All in favor of approving this and having me sign the warrant, please raise your hand. Okay, unanimous, thank you. The next item on the agenda is basically a sort of an update around sort of COVID protocols, and sort of what has been happening around our public facilities as a result. So I'm going to, rather than summarize it and then ask Rod to add further context, I'm going to just, in the interest of time, I'm going to go right to Rod and basically ask him to provide sort of what sort of has triggered the sort of recent COVID updates to our public facilities, and what have we been doing, what work has been done around the public access terminal, and some of our future thinking as a result of what we learned recently. So I'll turn it over to you.
Thanks, Roger. So I'm happy to take questions, as I'm working through this. So the week of November the 8th, there was a confirmed outbreak of COVID amongst the students at Marion Cross School. And it necessitated the school briefly shutting down and implementing a testing regime for the students in recognition of the fact that the two buildings are adjacent to each other, that staff that use this building have children in the school, and that the recreation program runs an after school program here with the same grouping of children as those present at the school. I felt it was the appropriate and prudent thing to do to revisit the COVID management plan and look at access to the Tracy Hall and to other public facilities. So on the November the 12th, they issued a revised plan that then reverted to basically the same setting as March 2020, which was no public access to the building, absent an appointment for town business. The short-term impact of that was the cancellation of one public meeting, which was the Affordable Housing Subcommittee meeting, and then the relocation of another, the Conservation Commission, which was held off-site in the following week. And then in that following week, we monitored the school situation closely, and were able to conclude that the school situation had settled somewhat and stabilized, but that there were still the possibility of, sort of a risk profile, if you like, that was higher than we thought was acceptable for Tracy Hall. And the clumsiness of the current setting with the state open meeting law and the conduct of public meetings meant that we relooked at the question of how to ensure open meeting law compliance while basically running Zoom meetings, which has been the pattern since the state of emergency was ended in the summer. So most of you will probably observe we're on Zoom now. We've been Zooming uninterrupted almost since the beginning of the COVID outbreak. When the emergency order ended, that required a public presence and a fixed location for a member of the public to participate in a meeting if the meeting was going to be conducted electronically. And in my experience, both as the planning director and as the acting town manager, this has basically involved me being present, sometimes with Roger, basically in a room with nobody else except for, in the instance of the select board meetings, the CATV staff. So to cut a long story short, what we needed to do was to firm up and solidify public access to a meeting, to a publicly warned meeting, and ensure that was available to a member of the public should they choose to do that, and reinforce the mode of delivering publicly warned meetings over the Zoom platform. So I relocated the previous town manager's old desktop computer to the multipurpose room, had it rebuilt in terms of software, had all the data and files taken off it so that it wasn't at public risk or at risk of being accessed. And so repurposed that computer with a monitor in the multipurpose room, and have developed instructions along with Roger to ensure that if there was a member of the public that wanted to participate in a publicly warned meeting, that could have access to that space and participate that way. But what that means is that there'll be some level of training and responsibility given to each committee, subcommittee, and commission and board in the town of Norwich, with roles and responsibilities, so that each one of those publicly warned meetings will have a member of the body present in the small conference room where Roger is right now, and they will be responsible for unlocking the door, ensuring that members of the public can make their way to the multipurpose room, that public kiosk is working and functioning for them to access the public meeting, and that they'll be available throughout the meeting so that if there's a technical difficulty, the person can contact the member of the body who will be located in the multipurpose room. But this is the only way we could come up with of achieving social distancing of humans, and more importantly, ironically, the social distancing of computers. Because when you have the two computers in the same space, fairly approximate to each other, there's a feedback loop that gets set up, and it's very difficult to operate. And so you get that deafening feedback that we've all observed. And so the only way to work with within the constraints of the building is to have the public access kiosk at one end of the building, and the board member responsible for organizing that at the other end of the building on two different wireless routers and separated by a considerable distance. I've confirmed with the town legal counsel that by advertising the meeting at 300 Main Street, that's adequate for the purposes of open meeting law, and that with adequate instructions and information about how to access the meeting available for the members of the public, that would meet the requirements of open meeting law.
Right. Okay. The only thing I would say, just add on to that, is I think in Norwich, the way that public meetings are conducted is largely online. The meetings are online meetings, and I say that they are online meetings because of what we have seen with anecdotal evidence in terms of where the participation is happening, and acknowledging, like, these steps have been developed to acknowledge that reality while also understanding that we have compliance to meet. So that's the only thing I would add on to that. But Mary, you have a question or comment?
I have a comment. Marcia and I got to experience the new system the other day with our town manager search meeting. I think the quality of the Zoom was excellent. There was no echo. And I was the person on site. The only thing I didn't realize is to, since I was hosting the meeting, is that I needed to open it and then admit the public access terminal as if it was a person. Yeah. So that was the only thing that I found sort of baffling, and Rod helped me through that. And then opening up and locking the door. I've got a key because I've been here for a long time. It is a little tricky. It's funky. Okay, so unlocking it was easier actually than locking it. But, you know, I don't know if there's a plan to change the lock to something a little more user-friendly, but that could be just a part of the procedure that's a little difficult. But I thought it worked really well.
Thanks for that feedback, Mary. Marcia?
So when I sent the open meeting law and the exception and the Vermont League of Cities and Towns explanation that the exception had expired, the language that was on November 15th. And the language is when Vermont's declared state of emergency in response to the COVID-19 pandemic was lifted in June 2021, Temporary Law Act 92, which allowed public bodies to meet without a physical location, expired. So what I'm hearing is that town council says that the public body in a physical location is represented by a computer in Tracy Hall.
And also,
But-
human.
and then also me.
But
Me.
you're not,
No,
I'm a
well, also a second person. So in the case of our meeting, Marcia, I was there and my phone number is publicly listed. I could go downstairs and help if needed. So there's both a human and the access terminal.
so just as long as I'm hoping that the attorney was aware of that and that the physical location and the public body was actually a separated human and a
Right,
separated.
it's separate.
Let's have Rod answer this because he actually had the conversation.
Yeah, so to be clear, the language in statute allows, prior to COVID, and that's the language that's in effect now. The language allows for I think the terminology is an electronic meeting, and I think they envisage something like a conference call, a telephone conference call. And what the language in statute calls for is that one member of the public body be acting as the designee for the whole body, be present at a publicly accessible location and make themselves known to any member of the public who may wish to participate in the meeting. And so that is what we've enacted here through these steps. So the public access kiosk is the mode by which members of the public can participate in the meeting from a fixed public location, that being Tracy Hall.
Yeah.
And that the designee in this instance is whichever member of the board has been given the role of sitting in the small conference room, but known to and accessible to the person or persons sitting in the multipurpose room, so that there would actually be some human interaction at a minimal level with appropriate safeguards, but that so that there is a human link, and the human link is to facilitate a technological link to the Zoom platform meeting.
Thank you. I understood all that. And I understood Act 92, which has now expired. And so my question was, did the attorney say that that particular statement, meeting without a physical location, would be satisfied that the temporary law which allows public bodies to meet without a physical location has expired? So my question is our setup, just yes or no, satisfactory to the attorney?
Yes.
Thank you.
And yeah, okay, great. Because it's warned as 300 Main Street. Mary?
I appreciate the separation just because, I am concerned about the surge and the mutations and all of that. I also think it ties up two conference rooms. So it doesn't necessarily make scheduling any easier. So I just wanted to point that out. Right.
Right. And then the follow-up, and then we'll sort of, unless there's more questions, we'll sort of put a pin on this, is the follow-up is that we've also expanded Zoom access. So part of this, we now have more robust capabilities to even host multiple Zoom meetings at the same time now. And we'll hear an update probably our next meeting. Committees will now have their own sort of logins to the Zoom, and they'll do so through their own email address. There'll be probably some policy questions associated with that. Nonetheless, now the irony, of course, is while we could all meet on a Tuesday at 7 p.m., we can't actually do that because we want to have a physical meeting location, and we use one building for that. So even though we have this sort of possible expansion of, the Zoom platform, we still are left not doing it. But as I think maybe I mentioned, I forget who I was talking to, it nonetheless ensures that people can participate in all the meetings. You don't have to choose your favorite meeting on a Tuesday. So any other questions or thoughts on this? We're feeling okay?
Mhm.
Claudette's not feeling okay, no?
I guess I'm relieved that the attorney says that it meets the open meeting law. I still don't quite get it.
Me too.
But I am also gravely concerned about the COVID variants, and the fact that I have had to wait to get a booster is also very concerning. So
yeah, and I think we're balancing like two sort of competing needs, right? And I think as the designee for these meetings, I certainly feel like this policy centers my health and well-being with an unvaccinated baby at home. But you obviously that sort of need is sort of weighed against our obligations, right? And so this is where we land on, right? So we all have discomfort for different reasons, but I'm glad that this meets the bar, right? As patient zero, I'm glad it meets the bar. Okay.
Sounds good. It's a good workable solution. It sounds like the lawyers are okay with it. So.
Okay. So the other part on this, I don't want to take, this is probably a larger discussion, but obviously the legislature has created legislation that allows local mask mandates, provides authority to communities to enact local mask mandates. And there's a set of conditions with that. But it's not specifically warned on this agenda, but I nonetheless, we're having this sort of larger conversation. So I would like to sort of put that question out there about what board members are thinking with a local mask mandate for our community. Mary?
I'd like to know, for instance, let's say the case of Danowitz. Does it make it easier or not easier if we have a townwide mandate? In other words, does it give them a little bit of cover if they'd like to have a mask mandate anyway? Like say, well, this is required by the town. That to me, that makes a difference. If the local businesses really feel they'd be safer to have masks, if we can provide some cover for them.
Okay, but Rod brought that up right before this meeting. Thank you, Mary. Anyone else? Any thoughts? Go ahead, Marcia. I saw your hand first.
Well, Claudette can go first if she wants.
Okay, Claudette.
Well, it gets, even when when with the state of emergency, it's the whole enforcement piece. It's how are you going to enforce it? That's the one big concern I have. How are you going to enforce it? And I think, I agree. I tend to agree with the governor in that the people that are going to wear the masks are going to wear the masks anyway. I don't think that necessarily a mandate for people who don't live in town coming into town to various businesses. If they're going to wear a mask, they're going to wear a mask. Having them, you can go across to Lebanon and Hanover, and even though they have mandates, there's still lots of people walking around without a mask. So,
Okay.
It's the enforcement thing that I'm very much pro mask, but I'm concerned about enforcement.
Okay. Marcia?
Well, I think sometimes those things come down to moral suasion, basically, if everybody's doing it and it's been said, then you feel you should be doing it. My obvious concern is the post office. I think that's probably federal property and we can't do anything about that. So, there's going to be holes wherever we sort of try and plug a hole, but I would be in favor of a mask mandate because I think it is perfectly logical and, unfortunately it doesn't have any teeth, but it doesn't hurt.
Okay. Thank you, Marcia. Rob?
Yeah, I think that anytime you're giving positive reinforcement or negative disenforcement, whatever, to keep masked in this period of potential surge, it helps focus local businesses and individuals on the usefulness. So there are a lot of places I've been, not a lot, there's one place I've been in town where people routinely are unmasked because they haven't been required to, I'm sure, is their rationale. But given the mandate to keep masked, they might be considerate enough to follow along. The higher proportion of people you get to comply, the more likely it is that the rest are going to come along.
Right. The only thing I would add is that I do think it is sort of this would enact as moral suasion rather than sort of strong policy. And unfortunately, we're in a sort of a larger context where that's what this policy would do. It should maybe do more, but nonetheless, that's probably what its effect would be. And the only thing I would say too is while public health officials have talked about how a patchwork of mandates are potentially ineffective, we are in a unique situation where two neighboring communities have a policy, although it seems like there's some issues in whether or not their citizens fully abide by it. But we could be a third, and then another community, Hartford, which is in a sort of physical region to us, has also sort of signaled an interest in discussion. So while not a universal mandate, enacting together, we might experience some of the benefits of a universal mandate, is all I would say. Go ahead, Claudette, and then we should wrap this up maybe.
Yeah, I was just going to ask her, you're not proposing a motion on this tonight, are you, since it was not on the agenda?
Yes. So I'm really good at reading sort of the tea leaves. I said that to Rod that we probably, because it wasn't specifically on. I think it would be appropriate to signal an intent or not an intent, but a directive to Rod or to town staff to draft something for review and possible adoption at the next meeting, if we feel comfortable with that as a motion.
That would be very good, I think.
Okay, I'm seeing some nods.
Yep.
So a motion could direct the interim town manager to draft a possible ordinance of an indoor mask mandate, a townwide indoor mask mandate for consideration.
So
Why would we need?
Is that a motion?
I was suggesting one, and I think you just made one.
Okay.
Okay.
Let's do it.
Um,
Let's vote on it.
and then is there a second? Seconded by Marcia. Okay, any discussion? Claudette, did you have a point that you wanted to make?
I just was wondering why we needed a motion, but I'm fine with it.
Motions have benefit of clarity.
That's true.
Okay, so made by Mary, seconded by Marcia. No further discussion. All in favor, please raise your hand. Okay, thank you. And so we'll review the ordinance and actually take formal action one way or another at our next meeting, okay? All right, so I think this is where Rod leaves us, right? Thank you, Rod, for your work. Okay, and then the next item on the agenda is sort of a series of updates regarding the town manager search. We'll be discussing the work that has been done by the committee vis-a-vis the our two board reps who served on that. We'll talk about some potential interview questions and other logistics. And then we'll discuss that under executive session. And then, yes, and then we'll come back out and then we'll proceed through our agenda. So Miranda, I think it might make sense I think it might make sense for you to maybe head out at this point, and we'll take over some meeting or minute recording.
So do you want to do, yeah, as long as you guys don't mind writing down all the times and all that jazz. That works for me.
I think so, but Claudia had her hand up.
Yeah, but just how will executive session work with the public access terminal?
So I'll put them in a waiting room like any other person.
Yes,
Gotcha.
we did that the other night too.
Okay, gotcha.
Yeah.
Let's begin with a motion to enter executive, and then we'll go from there. Okay,
let's see. I move to enter executive session under 1 VSA 313A3 to discuss town manager candidate interview questions and hear an update from the town manager screening committee.
Okay, is there a second?
Second.
Okay, made by Mary, seconded by Rob. All in favor, please raise your hand. Okay, thank you.
Bye.
Okay, bye.
Yeah.
Okay, I'm going to now pause the recording, put folks into the waiting room. Linda Cook, I predict at least a half hour, okay? But I don't know when we'll come back exactly, okay? But I'm gonna put you in the waiting room, putting folks in the waiting room.
Roger, can you hear me?
I can.
Okay, I've got to return a call, so I'll call back in it. So I won't be in the waiting room if you don't put me in now. I'll call you back in.
Okay, but just
right.
know that if you're not back into the meeting, it's because we're still in executive.
That's
Okay.
fine. Not a problem. Thank you.
Okay.
Recording stopped.
Is SAU 70 part of this remote?
Recording in progress.
Are we ready?
Yes, we're back in public.
I move to enter public session.
Okay, is there a second?
Second.
Okay, seconded by Marcia, 7:08. All in favor, please raise your hand. Okay, thank you, unanimous. Okay, we're now back in public session. There's no action to take. And so the last item on our agenda is there is a sort of a second group of people who will be assisting in this town manager search process. And that is the next item on the agenda. So what I might propose to this group is that we had had 11 applicants for the original town manager screening committee. We had, if I recall, decided that that pool would be good to draw from for future invitations for the next body. And so we have those names available to us. And there was also some folks who, in the process that we developed, sort of had 2 votes, so to speak. My question to this group is, do we want to recap and the folks who sort of had the 2 votes from this group as a good way to begin this conversation?
Yes, I'd like to hear them again, who they were.
Sure, and I believe Marcia may even had made a chart, but to my recollection, it was Liz Blum, Demo Safranis, Matt Sweat, I believe, was out there. Emily Shear. And then I don't recall others definitively.
Was it Nathan?
Nathan Margolis.
Nathan Margolis, I think, had 1, no?
Thought he had 2.
I think actually Rob had maybe also had him down. Is that right, Rob?
Yeah.
So that is
Yeah.
2. Yes, Nathan Margolis. Thank you, Marcia.
So we have 1, 2, 3, 4, 5 there. Is there any point in re-inviting Richard Stucker and Marisa Lorenzo?
So let's talk about that, because my understanding from Rick McGuire is that there was some interest in the screening committee in bringing Marissa and Richard sort of forward to the second group. Is that right, Mary?
Yeah.
Okay.
I would say so. What do you think, Marcia?
I thought so, because I think, it's sort of like a follow-up to see if they've already seen the first sort of interview, and this would be either confirmation or not.
Okay, so I would say, so at one point, Rick told me you could have up to 9. I don't know. He also has previously stressed being nimble in the past too, but nonetheless, with Marissa and Richard and the names we've talked about, I have 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7 here. Plus, I believe Mary and Marcia will continue on in that body as well. So that takes us to 9.
And there may be scheduling things where it may not be a maximum of 9 that are available.
Right. So rather than sort of making appointments, I might suggest that the motion be to authorize someone to invite them to participate, and then, depending on their response, forward them on to the consultant. Go ahead, Marcia.
What if we decided to invite that number and then have a reserve pool and just say, we'd like you to be in the reserve in case somebody can't make it?
That's great. An alternate, I think.
Yeah.
Yep. Okay, so that's a good process. We'll decide on a number. We'll pick some names, and then we'll have some alternates. And then I'm happy to begin this process immediately following this meeting. Any other thoughts, Claudette?
Yeah, I think 9 is possibly too many. I would like it to be maybe 7.
Okay.
And that doesn't include a person from employee.
We don't have an employee right now, right?
So if we had one employee,
Mhm.
Marcia and Mary, and then that would leave 4.
It's really 2 because you're going to put Marissa and Richard still in the mix. So then you have 2 more people. You have Liz Dino, Matt Sweat, Emily Shear, and Nathan Margolis is who we've named.
Yeah. So out of that 5,
Mhm.
oh goodness, I would put forward an invitation to, and I'm changing what my original recommendation was,
Mhm.
to Matt and Nathan. I'm guessing that there might be a scheduling issue with Nathan, but those would be my top 2.
Okay.
Keep
And then if
So-
one of them can't, yeah, shoot. And then as an alternate,
Mhm.
I would want Emily and
You have Demo and Liz Blum. Yes.
I would have Emily as an alternate.
Okay, great. Thank you. It's like, it doesn't have to be fantasy football here. I would know nothing about that anyway. Okay. All right. So thank you for that, Claudette. Obviously, like we appreciate everyone who has stepped up, right? Okay. So does everyone know what we're doing here? We said Marcia, Mary, an employee, Marissa, and Richard. And so now we're essentially choosing 2 more folks to sort of add to this. And then Claudette said Matt and Nathan with Emily as an alternate. So I'll turn to maybe Marcia. Do you have 2 names as an alternate that you would like to put forward from that list?
Yep, I would put forward Nathan and Demo, and alternates Emily and Matt.
Okay. I think I'm keeping this straight. Rob, do you have thoughts?
Yeah, I think the primary are Nathan and Matt, and then Demo as an alternate to be invited.
Okay, thank you. Mary?
I would go with Claudette's suggestion.
Claudette said
Matt
Nathan.
Sweat and Nathan.
Okay.
With Emily as a alternate.
Okay. I would go with Matt Sweat as well. And then I had Liz, but that doesn't matter, I guess. And then my alternate would be Demo. So what I'm tallying up is Matt and Nathan, and then I have
Emily has the
Emily?
most alternate.
And then Emily would be the alternate.
And this is also still subject to availability, but I think it's good thinking.
I think Demo can be a second alternate by how this works too. So, okay. So what we're doing, just to be clear, our second group is Marcia, Mary, Marissa, Richard, an employee, which we'll circle back to, Nathan Margolis and Matt Sweat, with Emily Shear and Demo Sophonis as alternates.
Okay, and if I understand the process correctly, this would be in person at Tracy Hall, starting at perhaps 4. And for Marcia, And Marcia, it might last till 9.
And yes, that's what I have heard from
Okay.
the consultant, but he will send the committee. We would obviously be meeting these folks primarily in the executive, and the consultant will be reaching out to all of these folks with the process and instructions. But what's going to happen immediately after this is I'm going to contact these folks that we just named, and we're going to get back to the employee and ask them, if they're available for Friday beginning around 4, and then if so, I'm going to then loop them in to Rick.
Right. So the 4 to 9 is a window where we can fit all this in.
Yes.
I'm just saying, if Marcia and I are there from 4 to 9, we're going to be fried.
I asked for a longer break, which will obviously signal dinner.
Good. Sounds good.
So you will eat.
Fine.
Any other thoughts on what any other thoughts?
I think it's good.
Go ahead, Claudette.
Well, I would just also think it might be nice if we could have somebody take our candidates to dinner.
I'll ask Rick about that. I believe dinner is
Their time to decompress as well.
yes, take a break.
Okay.
But I'll ask. Okay, that's good. Now let's get back to the employee. What employee would we like to ask? Any thoughts?
I would recommend Fielding.
Okay. Others?
I like that idea as well.
Me too.
Yeah, me too. But if he has availability issues,
Right.
do we have an alternate?
Right.
Cheryl?
I'm not sure Cheryl would
Not an
constitute
employee.
Okay.
I would suggest maybe our alternate be Bree.
I'm fine with that.
Yep, that's okay.
Sure.
Okay, that's great. So I got this down. I think that's it. It's now 7:21, so so we should move to. Is there a motion to adjourn?
I move to adjourn. Whoop.
Okay, made by
Second.
Mary, seconded by Rob. Any further discussion?
Thank you.
Thank you to our screening committee.
Yes, thank you.
Yeah.
This has been great.
You're welcome.
Okay.
We got to
All in
vote.
favor? All in favor, please raise your hand. Okay. Good night.
Good night.
All right.
7:23.
Recording.